As you can see from Simon's wonderful introduction, I have gone through many years of education. I started my career in a research position, moved into an engineer, and then moved into engineering management, and have come quite a long way. So what I'd like to speak about is, what I have been doing in my professional life about finding my career North Star and how I ended up being where I am today. So, in the previous session, we heard about some amazing points and some amazing success factors that we all as Asian American need to be very aware of. And this is also the first lesson I've learned when I came to the US as a young graduate student. And this is really about finding my voice and also making sure my voice is heard. So as you can see from my resume, I've gone to school. I've gone to school pretty much until there's no more school I can go to. So this is probably a very similar story to many of you sitting in the audience. So my parents, if you look at their living room, the most visible pictures on the wall is my graduation picture from Tsinghua University and also my brother's graduation picture from Tsinghua University. So in the culture we grew up in, receiving the best possible education seemed to be the epic, the pivot that we need to reach in our entire life. And little do we think about, that's really just the beginning. It's really not about education, it's about what we do with the education. So I came to America for more school. And when I first started in the US classroom, I find something that I'm very puzzled with. I have been a good student, so I work hard, I study the textbooks, I listen to the professors. And what I've noticed about my fellow American students is they like to interrupt. And they like to ask really stupid questions in the classroom. And sometimes I wonder, why are you insulting all of us and the professor by asking something the professor have just explained several minutes ago? So this is something I couldn't understand until it finally dawned on me. Being able to ask meaningful questions, being able to engage in a meaningful conversation, being able to show your interest in the subject that's being taught by the professor or is being discussed in the classroom, that's really a very important quality that is being valued in the professional world of America. So certainly finding your voice is not just about asking questions. Actually asking questions, what I've learned, is the easiest way to find a voice, because sometimes you may not always have a point of view, but I can guarantee everybody have a question in their mind. So in China, we grew up in a very, very different way. I really like one of the analogies someone used in describing the environment that we grew up in. So I once, in a female setting, people told me, you have this syndrome of being the princess syndrome. So what is the princess syndrome? The princess syndrome is about, the princess stays in the castle, spent all her life's energy on making herself looking really, really good. And the point of making herself looking really good is hoping one day the prince would come by the castle and rescue her, and they get, happily ever after that. So the princess syndrome is quite a reflection of how we grew up. We are taught to learn, get the best education, do the best quality of work, being always the hardest worker of the group. And hopefully you get noticed by your manager, by your superior, and you get promotion. In China, we have this phrase of, our chest is full of talent, but we never get recognized. 怀才不遇. That's a perfect reflection of the princess syndrome. So this has a profound effect on me. And what I've learned, comparing the Chinese or the Asian type of corporate culture versus the American corporate culture, I sum it up that you need three things to be successful. So there is competence, there is results. That is universal in all of the corporate expectation, or in all of the success criteria that we're being evaluated on. competence and results. But there is one last factor that is very different. In the Asian culture, we need to be a good follower, a big rule follower. We need to follow our leader. In the American culture, being critical thinking, being able to lead, being able to have your own point of view and your own voice is far more important. So as we focus on competence and results, what I've learned that making this transition from China to the US, the biggest difference that I could make is to have my own voice and being willing to have it heard. So, and I watched my kids. My kids were born in Silicon Valley. We went back to China for a few years and they came back again. And they seem to have exactly, the little Yanbing I see is growing up right in front of me. My daughter's growing up in Silicon Valley, just like lots of kids here. They love science, they love computer, they seem to be doing really, really well in their school, and they seem to have, strong ambition. But they are very quiet, and they don't like to speak. And so I see my girls. Actually, I have two girls. One of them, wants to be a video game designer. She really enjoys video game playing, but also designing. My other girl actually wants to be a tech company CEO. You can see she's fairly ambitious. But she asked me this question, Mom, you go on speech all the time. Can I be a tech company CEO without ever having to speak? And I had to really crush her expectation right there. Unfortunately, being able to speak, being able to be a strong and confident communicator is really the essence of how corporate America is valuing success. So this is the same point, that is emphasized, in the previous session we've heard. But I've personally living through this transition. And if you're listening to me speaking, I'm appearing to be very comfortable, very confident, as I speak here. I came from exactly the same route where my daughter came through. I remember when I was a little girl just like her, when I was even in high school, my relative would tell me, Yanbing, you really have a big virtue in you. And what is that big virtue? It's you're quiet. Because I can go to a big, family banquet with, all the relatives that gathering without saying a single word. So that was actually considered a virtue by my relatives. So as we learn the importance of communication and having a voice, I do think myself, and I'm looking at my kids growing up, we're a perfect example that when you know the importance of communication, when you put it as part of your professional priority, we can all learn how to become a much more effective communicator. So my first aspect is really about finding your unique voice and making sure it is heard. So let me switch gear to my second topic. This is about finding your career North Star. So there are so many different ways when you hear about a career planning session, that different ways to describe how you should plan your career. So often we hear about, hey, why don't you think about how you plan your career ladder? What we've learned is your career is never a ladder. You just keep going up because it can go in many, many different directions. And very few people have the opportunity or the fortune to just keep going up a straight ladder without ever falling or without missing a step. There has been discussions about how you build a career in a shape like a pyramid. You build a lot of foundation skills and you keep becoming better and better and you keep going up until you reach the very top of the pyramid. Or Sheryl Sandberg put it as, you need to think about your career as a jungle gym. So it's really, there is no rule here. You have to be able to navigate and go left and right and up and down and compete in a very non-conventional fashion. So what I've learned from my personal journey is really about defining a career North Star. So what does that mean? So again, coming back to our Asian heritage, I felt most of my life, I grew up in the autopilot mode. I know driverless car and autopiloting is all the rage in driving. But I do think autopiloting from a career and professional development point of view is suicidal. So I was in the autopilot mode. As we go to good school, if you're really good at school, you just go to many, many more schools. So we go to school. And we rarely think about what do we want to do with it. And if you are good at math and science, you become an engineer and you stay as an engineer. Rarely we think about what we really are, who we really are, what we really want. So this happened to me recently, when I turned 40. So this dawned on me that I have been largely growing in an autopiloted mode for my career. So I never really thought about what my end goal is and what I want to make myself look like. So when I turned 40, I really started to think about very, very hard. Some of you may be thinking, hey, is that an early onset midlife crisis? You start to get into all these philosophical thinking about who you want to become. Or maybe the Chinese way of, when we turn 40, we don't become confused anymore. This is like 40而不惑. But it really happened to me literally when I turned 40. So, I look at myself, what I enjoy. Yes, I have a deep engineering-rooted background, and I've been good being an engineer and being an engineering manager. But what do I enjoy the most? What I found out, what I enjoy the most is leading large organizations, leading large groups of people to look at some impossibly difficult goals, and leading transformation, and leading business transformation, and trying to create something of impact. So I really think that is my true calling. So when I turned 40, I decided, okay, what is the best way to do that? Is to run a large business, and is to become a CEO. So that seemed to be a very lofty goal at the time. And why that was the case? Because I was still fairly junior in my professional development. I was a senior manager, and I just got promoted into director around the time I turned 40. But with this goal in mind, for the next few years, I worked really hard to strategize what skills I need to learn, and what roles I need to play, and what type of relationship and mentorship and support I need to get. So, and it is very powerful for me. I have been, at certain junctures, being offered opportunities to do something that is very interesting. At one point, at VMware, we have this amazing role of leading our global workforce transformation, working very directly with our CEO and our CFO, all the senior leaders in the company. And this seemed to be a big jump from where I was doing, but I turned it down. I turned it down because I wanted to gain much more deeper experience in running a business unit, running a product organization. So I remember even having a conversation with our CEO, Pat Gelsinger, who is a longtime Intel veteran. He gave me a very clear answer. Yanbing, you know where you're wanting to go. And therefore the decision is very simple, is to stay on the product path. So having a clear North Star not only gives me clarity, it gives all the people around me an incredible levels of clarity. So this has helped me tremendously. And if we look at all of us in this group, so starting from our graduation from college until retirement, we easily have 40 years of spent in our career. And clearly, Dr. Koo was able to do it much longer than 40 years. So this is my personal story in the past 5 years. In 5 years is really a very short, insignificant period of time thinking about our career spending in a 40-year life career span. And so what can happen in that 40 years if we make it much, much more meaningful, much, much more convicted of the goal you want to go. Coming back to the analogy of driving and autopiloting. So when we drive, yes, with all the great help of GPS and all that, rarely we would be driving without entering a destination. But too often, I see people entering the career without ever thinking about where they want to go. So even though this seems to be a very simple question, if I just ask many of you in the audience today, what is your career North Star? I bet most of you will seem to be very puzzled, because this is not something we tend to think about a lot. In driving, we think about the destination, we think about the route, and we think about what experience and sights we're going to see along the road. A very similar analogy is happening for our career. So think about your career North Star, and that's something that definitely has helped me tremendously. So what I'm going to say on this last topic. So this is actually the topic about finding ourselves and finding who we are, and also how we can be an authentic leader, an authentic person. So looking at this picture, this picture is from Peking Opera. What is the importance of these two pictures? The picture on the left is an oil painting that's hanging in my dining room. So this is the character, a very feminine character in Peking Opera. And the picture on the right is Mu Guiying, the famous female heroine in Chinese history. So not only she's beautiful, as all the stereotypes for women requires, she's very powerful, and she's admirable for a huge number of soldiers and defended the country against the foreign invasion. So Peking Opera is the best way to describe, sometimes how much stereotype come into place. Because as beautiful as, historical this art form is, there is also a very distinct way of, you look at the color of the people's costume, the style of the people's costume, the type of makeup or face paint they put on their face, you can know exactly what this person's profession is. Is this person rich or poor? Is this person good or bad? So really everything about your appearance defines who you are. And certainly there are all these Asian American stereotypes. For being female, there are also lots of stereotypes. When you become a mother, people naturally assume you're no longer committed to your work. When we are Asian, we're naturally assumed we must be a really good engineer and like to follow the rules. And all these stereotypes against us, they're unconscious, but they're incredibly strong biases that sometimes limit what we can do and limit what we can accomplish. So recently I was being biased as being too young, which is actually a bias I like. I was walking in to meet with CEO of a very famed semiconductor company who happens to be Chinese American as well, and not on the pioneer list, but almost ready to be on one of the Silicon Valley pioneers. And I walk in to have this meeting with the CEO, and he passed by the conference room without entering. And I find that to be quite puzzled. He later explained to me, "Oh, Yanbing, I assume you're Yanbing's assistant." So we get stereotype all the time. And it's unintentional, it's unconscious, it's not with bad intention, but this is how ingrained stereotyping and all these unconscious biases are in our society and in the workplace. So how do we react to that? The way we react to biases is by covering. A lot of the time, the way we react, say, hey, if I don't want to be viewed as a weak leader, maybe I need to appear as less feminine. Margaret Thatcher, who's one of the greatest female leader, in modern history, she even went through voice training to make her voice sounding much lower, much manlike. So people really go into great strength to cover up who they really are. Asian, we tend to think about, hey, we come to America, We need to be more westernized. We need to be assimilated. So those are the ways, maybe those are the ways to success. The good news is there has been a lot of recent research, and there has been a lot of real examples where it shows assimilation is not the path to success. Assimilation is not the path to leadership. Authenticity, on the other hand, is the path to success and is the path to leadership. So I recently read a lot of research by a Japanese-American scholar called Kenji Yoshiro. So he's a Yale scholar specialized in law, and he's Japanese-American. He also is gay. So he did a lot of amazing research about how uncovering and authenticity now is really important for us to become who we are and to become truly successful in the professional world. And I see this play out in many of the examples around me. When I was a graduate student at Princeton, I had a very famed professor, Wayne Wolf. So he became an IEEE fellow probably shortly after he became 30 years old. So he's very well established in VLSI design and, so in his professional field. And he was a good supporter of me. So I think we had a productive relationship. So I was able to graduate in 3 years under his supervision. So I think we had a productive relationship. But what I felt was always missing is I never had a real personal relationship with my professor, despite I have the same levels of, very high levels of respect for him, and despite that, the fact that he actually has good recognition of my PhD work and let me graduate very quickly. So it took many, many more years for me to understand why. So this is when I got an email from someone called Meredith Wolf. This is when I learned my professor actually had gone through gender reassignment and became a she. And this is when I'm no longer seeing my professor on a daily or regular basis, and we're living on opposite coasts in the country. But when Meredith discovered who she really was, she really came alive. We actually became much more closer in our personal relationship, in our connection. So this is a real example when someone, rather than covering up who they really are, uncovering powerful, powerful story. My predecessor in my role at VMware is also a Chinese American called Charles Fan, and I think some of you have seen his presentations in a forum like this before. So if you get to know Charles, Charles was a senior VP, was a general manager, a highly successful executive at a company that is a fully American company. And yet, he's more Chinese than anyone I've seen. He really is like a Chinese college kid because he likes to play ping pong or any of, he orders Chinese food for any of our offsite events, even though we have a far larger percentage of non-Chinese in our organization. So he, and most importantly, he really is just like a college kid. His hair kind of looks like out of place, when he comes to work, not like a typical senior vice president in the company. But yet, he was very powerful, very successful, because being the authentic himself, he was able to build a connection with the people around him and get the level of respect he gets. And I was listening to one of our executives in the company, and this person made a comment saying, I'm willing to work for Charles at any given time. And this is a person who's far more senior than Charles in the company rank, and yet he was able to say this. So what does authenticity help? How does it help us? First of all, it's really, really difficult to fake who we really are. It's really not sustainable. You may be able to do it once or twice, but you can't really do it over a long period of time. So that makes you a very tired and very unhappy person. So covering is not really a sustainable activity. And authenticity is also much, much more powerful. Because when we are authentic leader, we don't lead just by giving orders. We lead by giving our heart. So this is where authenticity comes from. We're able to connect with people in a much, much more powerful way. And authenticity also let people believe you're confident. Because you're confident in your own skin and you're willing to show up as who you are. So I find it very rewarding when sometimes I get to be called as an authentic leader. Because when I hear that, I feel that is the highest levels of recognition I can receive for my style of leadership. So we've talked about 3 topics that I've learned, and I find it very personal to my heart and also personal to where I am today. So we talk about finding the voice, and we talk about how you find your voice and also make sure it's heard. We talk about finding your North Star. So think about what that North Star looks like, feels like for you today. We talk about authenticity is the way to success. Authenticity is the way to leadership. And nothing helps making you being an authentic person by sharing your story. So think about how you can demonstrate authenticity by telling the stories of yourself and who you really are. It's been a huge honor to speak to all of you, and I really look forward to the interaction that we have at the panel time. Thank you very much.